Hi. Today I'm going to continue weaving the lattice pattern. I also am going to talk about some of the observations that the fur traders had when they first started trading with us many years ago. And I have to warn you that this segment will be PG. Parental guidance is recommended because I'll be talking about some stuff that happened and some observations where you definitely needed to read between the lines. Okay, so I'll be talking about that while I'm weaving these raven's tail robes, where I'm enclosing four for every twine, and I'm creating the lattice pattern. Thank you for joining me today. Hi, we're back. Okay, I was going to tell you a little bit about some of the customs of the Haida. And first of all, we need to say that our culture is matrilineal. I am an eagle because my mother is an eagle. I'm a member of the Algittens Gitne in Old Masset. And I am that because my mother is that. My grandmother was that. So that is how we get our heritage, what we inherit with names and songs and stories. And so we have eagles or ravens. And if you're an eagle, you're expected to marry a raven. And with your ravens, you're expected to marry an eagle. So we declare what clan we are by what clothes we wear and what we put on our objects. Everything is owned by a clan, and so we mark that with our symbols and our totems. So anyway, so the fur traders came along our coast, and first off in 1774 with the Spanish. They came the very next year in 1775. Then another explorer came in 1779. And then I talked about Camino, how he was here in 1792. So, and after, let's see, the British came, Colnet and Duncan were here along our coast. Colnet actually was the okay, I gotta stop and check my pattern. Okay, so Colnet was here with Duncan, and that same year, before Colnet, Dixon was around here. And Dixon is the one whose name for the our island stuck. So for the longest time we were called the Queen Charlotte Islands until a few years ago when it officially went back to being Haida Gwaii, or beautiful Haida Gwaii. But okay, so the Spanish came, Dixon and Colnet and Duncan, and then in 1786 the Americans came, and that was right after their revolution. So they didn't really like the British. They had just won a war against the British for their independence. So that showed up in the trade arenas on the Northwest Coast. And the Haidas definitely noticed that they treated each other like enemies, even though they spoke similar language. And I'm sure that had something to do with how they traded with the British and the Americans. So there was quite a lot of competition. Let me get this back. Amongst the traders on our coast, with the different nations that came here to trade. So, like I said, I've been reading a lot of the journals and the diaries of these Europeans that came here, and more often than not, they would comment how the women were ruling the trade. Like if something got traded or was offered for trade by the Europeans, the Haidas automatically turned to their women, and so it was like the women approved the trade. So that was often commented on, and there's no surprise for any Haida that's reading that would have happened, because we are leaders, and we are matriarchs, and we learn to grow up to be matriarchs by proper training. So in our culture, it was no big surprise that a woman would be required to approve the trade. So that is one of the reasons why I believe that the consistent trade item in along the coast was clothing and cloth. Now, a lot of people, because our cultures emphasize the men as leaders, and that's like the prevalent European and American stance with women. It's like they were in the home and having children and not really part of the working force or the leadership. But in the Haida, that was different. We were part of the decision-making part. So what does that have to do with our robes? Well, many people that study the Northwest Coast, because it was written by male and men observers and men who were writing these notes, there's an emphasis on the iron that traded, and what was what that iron trade, how that influenced our culture, right? But the one thing that really stands out to me when I went to study these documents was that it wasn't iron that was consistently demanded. It was the clothing and the bolts of fabric. So that influenced the early trade. And I could see why the women would latch on to that new trade material, because it takes close to 10 months to a year to weave a robe. Everything is done with your hands. All the tension, there's no heddle or shuttle. Nothing is fast about this weaving. So I could see the women on the canoe saying, wow, that'll lighten my load of work. And so they would encourage the chief or the head person on the canoe to trade for the cloth. So, and that wasn't just occasional. That came through as a constant. That was constantly the demand, was for cloth and the already made clothing. So another thing that I want to correct in all of these books and these observations and these journals, they also talk about the trade in women. And they say that, oh, the chief traded or offered his daughter or his wife. And this is what I want to say. Anybody who knows anything about the Northwest Coast cultures knows that a chief could never choose and be the boss or choose to offer his wife or his daughter. And the simple truth is, he could never do that. He is of a different clan. He is of the opposite clan. He cannot tell his wife to go with these traders. He cannot tell his daughter to go with these traders. That's not how it was on our coast, in our culture. So anybody that's reading that and knows anything about the culture would know that is wrong. That is not what happened. So I was talking to you earlier about Sigmund Backstrom. He came in an English trade boat, the Three Brothers, and he was a surgeon. He wasn't the designated artist aboard. He was a surgeon, but he must have loved to paint and draw, because he did that often on the boat. And so he left 8 portraits of Haidas. And so there is a portrait of a chief's daughter, and she's wearing a deerskin dress that has sleeves, and it's tucked in on the waist, and it's very tailored. So the chief's daughter, Hatsia's chief's daughter, the daughter that was painted by Sigmund Backstrom, she is wearing a blue robe, but she also is wearing that deerskin dress. And there are, like I said, there's explorers, or not explorers, but ethnologists and anthropologists that read these things also. And so I know that my observations are going to go against some of the earlier observations from the archaeologists or the anthropologists, because in that portrait of the chief's daughter, she's wearing that deerskin dress. And in my observations and in my manuscript, I talk about it as a deerskin dress. But other anthropologists, they have said that because it was cinched in and because it had the close-fitting sleeves, they are assuming it was a trade dress from traded as a dress or made as a dress from bolts of fabric. Where I like I said, I went to Yale University and I examined the neck area and the sleeve area of that dress. And it's just like it was tan leather. There's an uneven cut to creating the neckline, and in the sleeve, it's an uneven sleeve edge. So, and just the way it folds and how the painter had depicted it, I'm pretty sure it's a leather dress, but that goes against other people have written about this dress. but I'm as good as any when it comes to looking at these paintings and knowing the cultural traditions of our people, and being able to deduce some important things that other people may have looked over. So I think that it's important to correct things and to say, hey, this is how I feel. This is what I've observed. And anyway, it's all been a really fun couple of decades going searching and going into these things in detail so that I can mine the truth, so that we can get closer to the truth, that it isn't just everything that was written down about us. We can go back to those records and we can see mistakes and we can correct. And I really am glad that there are people who, like museums, who are really honoring the contemporary culture of these people today, and accepting their contribution to the knowledge that we have of our cultures of the past. So, because our cultural traditions were handed down to us in our families and in our clans, and despite, like in Canada, it was against the law to have feasts and gatherings, and now it's not. And so we are a living culture, and I'm really happy to be able to correct past misconceptions. So there was my X-rated story today. Thank you for listening to me, and we'll see you tomorrow.